Welcome back to the Ranks FC podcast. Jack and Dean here, walking you through the last 16 of the Champions League. And we're going to move into the second week of fixtures, starting, Dean, with a replay of last season's final, Liverpool versus Real Madrid. We talk about headline ties. We talked about PSG Bayern, which was a final a couple of years ago. Yeah. This was last year's final. And what a strange place both of these teams find themselves in right now.
They do find themselves in a strange place. Yeah. I mean, I'll be honest, I think Real Madrid found that final last time out easier than they actually expected. I think Carlo Ancelotti even admitted that afterwards, that it was actually okay, the way that they managed to manage that game, if you like. I like that we actually have a matchup now between these two teams that isn't a final. They've played each other in a couple of finals. To see them over two legs, home and away, to see the force of Anfield, the force of the Bernabeu in play, I like that. That's something different that we're seeing here from when we've usually seen these teams up against each other. Obviously, both have unbelievable heritage in this competition. Madrid have the edge, but still, Liverpool feel like they play a special part in the history of the Champions League, and they do. They're right.
Absolutely.
Especially, go back to the European Cup and stuff. Like this is something that is deeply entwined in the history of Liverpool. But this is Real Madrid, and given where Liverpool are right now, it's really still hard to see how they will manage to beat Real Madrid, even when Madrid aren't on top of their game. Liverpool finished second in their Champions League group. They were behind Napoli. That's not really a knock on anyone, given the way Napoli have been this season. But still, they didn't win a group that they were largely expected to win. Napoli, Ajax, Rangers didn't win the group, came second. So I don't think that's a great start. Real Madrid did win their group, only by a point over RB Leipzig. It was a pretty straightforward group beyond that, to be honest. They had Shakhtar and Celtic in their group. So no real major tests for either team coming into this on Champions League wise. But then you look at it domestically, I mean, Liverpool are just an absolute shambles. I just find them so hard to get my head around in terms of what has actually happened to this team. It is catastrophic, the decline of this club in such a short space of time. I just cannot believe that it's been able to come to this. I'm just trying to open up a message that I received yesterday, and I think it sums up really well where we've got to with Liverpool. He's done the round. You've probably seen it on social, but it was Klopp excuses 22-23. Fulham away, pitch was too dry. Crystal Palace home, which Man United, time ran out. Everton away, we've been playing too many games. 6 games into the season, that was. Napoli away, 2 unlucky penalties. They lost 4-1. Brighton at home, didn't know what Brighton would do here. Arsenal blamed VAR. Forest said there were too many fixtures. Leeds, too many injuries. City said Haaland was offside, wasn't. There's loads of things. Wolves said there was a lucky moment. They lost the game 3-0. Brighton blamed injuries. Like, it's a bit of a joke. It's a bit of a meme, but it's also like not far from the truth. Like, Klopp has kind of lost the plot this season. I think it was epitomised by the fact that he singled out James Pearce of The Athletic in his press conference the other day and started having a dig at him and refused to answer his question, but said he would answer it from somebody else. This is a reporter that has covered Klopp extensively throughout his entire time at Liverpool, has covered all of the glory. He's been very, very fair throughout his time. And it's not... If James Pearce is suddenly like, well, what's happening here, Jurgen? Like, how has it come to this? He's perfectly within his rights to ask that question, because from the outside, we don't understand. Not only have you got injuries, we get that part. How are the rest of your team underperforming so incredibly? Like, it's just ridiculous.
Look, Klopp is flailing around at the moment, and because he obviously is looking at this and being like, where have my team gone? I can't see the team that I built. And I think that's part of it. There are obviously parts of these excuses that you look at and it will become a meme. And it's been one of those things, we talked about it on Monday, that Klopp is a serial winner and therefore a bad loser. It's not a trait unique to him. I think Sam said it was the same of Pep Guardiola. It's the same of Eric Ten Hag. people who are this focused on winning don't take losing badly. Don't take losing well. They're not sitting here going, oh, this is exactly fine. And yes, Klopp probably flails more than most, right? And I think that's fair to say. But generally, I think when you're looking at these things, I'm not looking at a man who I'm like, oh, you're trying to find ways out. I'm looking at him going, I don't know what to say. And that's a strange position to find himself in. He can't be looking at the performance at the weekend and going, well, the reason we lost is because Wolves had one attack in the second half. The reason they lost is because they were just incredibly easy to play through in both central midfield and central defence. But I think generally Klopp will be looking at that and going, I don't recognise the team that is playing in front of me. And that's a pretty terrifying thing for a manager, isn't it? You're looking at it and going, how do you get out the other side of this without a full squad refresh in the summer? And are Liverpool going to have the finances available to do that? We don't know yet. And I think it leaves everyone in a really quite tricky position here. It just feels like Liverpool are burnt out, and the emotional toll of last season and coming so close to that quadruple, the physical toll of playing that many games, all of it coming together without, significant new faces in the areas where Liverpool needed them most, I think has left them in a situation where it's very hard to pick up the pieces until the summer. It's almost like get to the end of this season and refresh. But just like Chelsea, Liverpool's ability to just make things happen in knockout competitions remains pretty sensational. And that's why I will never write them off in a tie like this.
Yeah, I mean, I understand that. I wouldn't normally write them off either. I think I'm gonna. I honestly think I'm gonna. As we sit here right now, I mean, this game is to be played in a couple of weeks' time, like literally for 2 weeks from the moment we're sat here talking. And a lot could change in that time. I mean, Liverpool have got games against Everton and Newcastle. I mean, Real Madrid are on their way to the Club World Cup. Like they've got quite a bit of action to take place here before they still have that and then 2 league fixtures to carry out before they even get to focusing on this Liverpool first leg. So that's a lot to bear in mind. And for Madrid, you've got like Benzema's not been available right now. It doesn't look like they're going to rush him back for those Club World Cup games, but you never know, he might feature. Will he be available for this tie?
I don't think he's travelled, mate.
Has he not even travelled in the end? I know there was talk about whether he would.
Courtois, and I don't think they've Benzema either. But there's bigger injuries as well in Militao, Mondi, and Lucas Vasquez, who isn't maybe the most obvious player to be like, oh, he's injured, but actually giving right back cover for Dani Carvajal, I think he's actually become quite important to this Real Madrid squad in terms of rotation. And all of those being injured without any kind of expected return dates being obvious on the table, it's not pretty. And you actually double that down on Real Madrid's form this season, right? First 11 games, Real Madrid picked up 31 points from 33. They drew 1 game in the first 11 and won the other 10. Since then, in the 9 games following that, they have won 4, drawn 2, and lost 3. It's suddenly been like, oh, hang on. Real Madrid's form has kind of dropped off a cliff a little bit. And then you can see that by the fact that Barcelona are 8 points clear at the top of La Liga all of a sudden. They lost 1-0 to Mallorca at the weekend. You look at the team that actually played, the rotations in it. Nacho played centre-back, scored an own goal. Camavinga played left-back. The midfield 3 was Ceballos, Tchouaméni, Valverde, both Kroos and Modric on the bench. Alaba came off the bench, obviously coming back himself. Asensio, Vinicius, and Rodrigo as the front 3. This is not the Real Madrid side that we know. And look, as you say, it might be different by the time it comes back round. But at the moment, this is a team that is not playing the way that we expect it to. And Liverpool have to take heart from that.
They do. But Liverpool's form and so far this calendar year is the worst in the Premier League. They are literally the worst team in the Premier League on form right now as we sit here. So they are in actual crisis. Like I'm trying to think of a player that's not out of form. I'm sure I can. There's no one that's jumping out at me. It's got that bad. Like there's been a few. You're thinking, oh, maybe, mate. Like it might still be Harvey Elliott keeping hope alive. But there's just been no uplift, and it's hugely worrying. if you're a Liverpool fan, as to how this season ends up playing out. Again, I talk about Chelsea, obviously, and the fact that winning the Champions League can save their season. This obviously the same for Liverpool, so it's the same rules apply. I think I said Chelsea were 10th earlier. They're not, obviously they're 9th and Liverpool are 10th, but that's crazy in itself. Like those both teams underperforming massively, yet it still feels like Liverpool. For some reason, it feels like Liverpool are much worse than Chelsea to me. It just feels like maybe it's because they've had a harder fall. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe it's that we had such high expectations of Liverpool that they've just properly crashed down. Whereas Chelsea, we knew there was going to be some problems this season anyway, as they got to grips with all the changes that were being made. But I couldn't tell you anything positive about Liverpool going to this game beyond the fact that typically in the competition they do well, and Anfield is usually a place that helps them pull off big results. Player for player, there's no one here that I could dig out and say, yep, he will stand up for this match and he'll dig out a performance. I'm not going to say that about Darwin Núñez. I'm not going to say it about Salah. I'm not going to say it about Thiago. There's no one. Trent, whoever it is, I'm looking at him like, don't trust him. Like, just can't rely on these people right now. It's a crazy place to be in. And it'll be interesting to see just how they do approach this game, whether they're cagey in it or whether they do actually try and obviously they're going to try and win, but what they can take away from the first leg to go into the Bernabeu, because I'm pretty sure they're going to feel like they need to go in there with the lead. I can't see that this Liverpool team feel like they could go on even terms to the Bernabeu for a Champions League second leg knockout game and expect to come out alive. I don't think that's going to be the case. So they've got to win this first leg.
Yeah, agreed. I think that's the only hope in this one. Although again, it's Liverpool in the Champions League, and weirder things have happened. Right, let's come on.
I'm trying to push that out my head.
I know. And logic doesn't dictate, but logic sometimes has to not dictate in knockout competitions. Yeah. These are the ways of the world. Right, let's come on to Eintracht Frankfurt against Napoli, which is probably my favourite tie of the round, I think. This is the one that I'm looking at and going, yeah, this is the one I'm excited about. And it's not just because of Napoli, which is nice, because Eintracht have, well, rejuvenated themselves, I think, in so many ways. Obviously, they had... they go and they came second in their group behind Tottenham. There were some very impressive performances in there to get ahead of Sporting and Marseille. I think it was the most even group of all of the Champions League groups. There was no obvious weak link in it. There was also no obvious absolute standout side in it either. So this was a fun group, and Eintracht came out of it in second place. We know that they have pedigree in Europe. They are the current holders of the Europa League, and a team who have been very, very impressive in their own right. Their fan base is incredible. So is Napoli's. This is a game where you expect it to be absolutely electric in both legs. And I think that makes for fun circumstances. We know a lot about Napoli. A lot has been made of their season. They are exceptional. They are glorious fun. They are steaming away at the top of Serie A, helped by Milan's crumbling and Juventus having an absolute points deduction. But here we are. You look at all of these bits and bobs, but Frankfurt are famous upsetters of the apple cart, if you will. They're a team that knows exactly how to look at a favourite in the eye. They came up against Barcelona in the middle of that Europa League run, and they went, yeah, all right, go on then. Went to the Camp Nou, took over, brought fans from everywhere. There were Frankfurt fans in all the home areas, and they absolutely spoiled the party of what had been the Xavi Renaissance up to that point. Completely threw all of those plans in the bin, and then went on to lift the trophy. And I think when you look at actually how these sides have come up and how they've been playing of late, you know, they've got that 1-1 draw away at Bayern Munich. They went to Freiburg and drew, which isn't a great result, but Freiburg were second, third in the Bundesliga table at that point. They've beaten Hertha 3-0. They beat Schalke 3-0. So since coming back from the break, Frankfurt are unbeaten. They've scored a lot of goals, and they've gone away from home and ground out results. And actually, I think that's probably the blueprint, right? Go away from home, try and ground out a draw, bring them back home, and absolutely win the tie on your own patch. So I expect Eintracht to come out absolutely steaming in this first game. I expect them to come out flying out of the traps and try and pin Napoli back, because if you let Napoli run at you, you're going to be torn apart. This side is so good. And we've obviously spoke at length about the ability of Kvaratskhelia, of Osimhen, the fact that Lobotka has had his renaissance as the kind of middleman in this, holding down the fort from the deepest point in midfield and just keeping everything ticking like the metronome. It's a team that knows everything about itself. It is very comfortable in itself at the moment. And they are rightfully major favourites for this clash. But I just have an eye on that Frankfurt being like, we don't do favourites here. We are famous for breaking hearts of big teams who fancy themselves going a little bit far, for ending the fairy tale. And I think that is what makes this such an exciting game.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, look, Napoli have to be favourites. I mean, given everything they've done so far in the Champions League and domestically, like they've been brilliant. I've been sceptical of it coming through the season, waiting for them to slip up, but there's no sign of it. So fair play. And I guess my concern on the Champions League would be they are now in such a strong position in Serie A. Is it strong enough that they can actually like focus on both, or are they still going to be absolutely like, we cannot let this slip in the league, that something like this does slip? That's probably the only cause for concern I'd have, because otherwise they win this game. They are the better team. They're probably the best team in Europe at the moment. Like, they should probably be favourites to win the Champions League right now, but they're not. And there are reasons for that. Yeah, but there are reasons for that. But yeah, you're right. Frankfurt in his first leg are going to give it everything. Their support is unbelievable. We've both seen them before. Like, they are ultra loyal, so noisy, and it will count for something in that first leg. So it'll be interesting to see if they can get the lead that they definitely need going into that second leg. I'm still going to back Napoli, but there is reason to be cautious.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I too am going to back Napoli in this one, but I think the upset is probably closer than most people will have it on their cards, if you will. The history suggests that upsets are very possible when Eintracht are in town. So I wouldn't be writing them off, is my thing. But I think Napoli are rightly favourites, and will be rightly favourites in pretty much every game they play this season until we're proved otherwise. So it's going to be a cracking tie. What a day that is. Liverpool, Real Madrid, Frankfurt, Napoli. That is a cracking game. Cracking day of football. If you've enjoyed this video, make sure you like and subscribe for more from us at Ranks FC.